A young Carl Jung sat across from a woman who couldn't stop crying. She had everything: wealth, beauty, a husband who adored her, children who needed her. But she was dying inside, not from disease, from love. Jung leaned forward and said something that would get him cancelled today. "You're not suffering from depression. You're suffering from the most dangerous addiction known to man. You're addicted to another person." That session changed psychology forever. But here's what they buried from his research. Jung discovered that romantic love triggers the exact same neural pathways as cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. The same dopamine floods, the same withdrawal symptoms, the same progressive tolerance requiring bigger doses to feel anything at all, except with one terrifying difference. Society celebrates this addiction. They write songs about it. They make movies glorifying it. They tell you it's the meaning of life. And while you're chasing that high, something inside you is slowly dying. Your authentic self. The person you were before you needed someone else to feel complete. Right now, someone watching this is in withdrawal. You check your phone every 30 seconds. You can't focus on work. You replay conversations in your head. You feel physical pain in your chest. And everyone tells you this is normal. This is what love feels like. But Jung knew better. He spent 50 years studying the human psyche, diving into the darkest corners of human consciousness. And what he found about romantic love was so disturbing that most of his work on this topic remains hidden in academic archives. Because if people really understood what falling in love does to the brain, to the soul, to your capacity for individual wholeness, the entire romance industry would collapse overnight. Here's the question nobody wants to answer. What if the thing you've been taught to chase your entire life is actually the thing destroying your chance at ever becoming whole? Jung called it participation mystique. It's a French term describing a psychological state where you lose the boundary between yourself and another person. You merge, you fuse, your emotions become theirs, their moods control your day, their validation becomes your oxygen. Sounds romantic, doesn't it? Jung called it psychological possession. Primitive tribes have shamans who perform exorcisms to free people from this state. We have wedding planners. Think about what happens when you fall in love. Suddenly, you can't make decisions without considering them. You can't enjoy experiences without wishing they were there. You can't feel good about yourself without their approval. You've literally given another person remote control over your emotional state, your self-worth, your capacity to function. And the most insidious part? You did it voluntarily. You call it love. Jung called it the surrender of individuation. Let me paint you a picture that will make your blood run cold. Jung documented hundreds of cases where people in love exhibited the same behavioral patterns as severe drug addicts. They lied to themselves about how bad it was. They made excuses for increasingly destructive behavior. They isolated from friends and family who questioned the relationship. They experienced euphoric highs followed by crushing lows. They needed more and more contact to feel the same level of satisfaction. They went through physical withdrawal when separated, and when it ended, they didn't learn from it. They immediately started seeking the next fix, the next person to merge with, the next hit of that chemical cocktail their brain was now dependent on. You've seen this. Maybe you've lived it. The friend who disappears into a relationship and emerges months later not quite themselves anymore. The person who can't be alone for more than a week before desperately seeking the next romantic connection. The individual who jumps from relationship to relationship, each time convinced this one is different, this one is real, never recognizing they're just chasing the same high. Jung observed something fascinating about his patients. The ones in long-term relationships weren't happier. They were more fragmented, more anxious, more dependent. They had outsourced the work of becoming whole to another person. And when that person inevitably couldn't fill the void, because no person can, they blamed the relationship rather than recognizing the fundamental problem. You cannot find yourself in another person. You can only lose yourself. Which city are you watching this from? Because I guarantee in your city right now, thousands of people are experiencing withdrawal from love addiction. They're checking their ex's social media. They're texting people they know are wrong for them. They're compromising their values, their goals, their very identity for another hit of validation, connection, that feeling of being chosen. And they have no idea they're exhibiting addict behavior because society has normalized this particular addiction to the point where questioning it seems insane. But here's where Jung's research gets really dark. He discovered that people don't fall in love with actual people. They fall in love with projections. You meet someone and immediately project onto them your anima or animus, the unconscious feminine in men or masculine in women. You're not seeing them. You're seeing your own psychological content reflected back. You're falling in love with yourself, with your own unconscious material, with qualities you've repressed or never developed. And the high you feel? That's not connection. That's the temporary integration of split-off parts of your psyche. It feels amazing because for the first time in your life you feel whole, but it's an illusion, because that wholeness isn't coming from integrating those qualities within yourself. It's coming from merging with another person who seems to possess them. This is why the beginning of relationships feels so intense, so magical, so unlike anything else. Your brain is literally experiencing a psychotic break from reality. You're not in love with a person. You're in love with your own projected fantasy. And when reality inevitably intrudes, when the real person starts showing up with their flaws, their limitations, their humanity, the magic dies. Not because they changed, but because your projection collapsed. Jung witnessed this pattern thousands of times. The couple who was so in love now can't stand each other. Nothing actually changed about either person. What changed was the projection lifted, and underneath was just two flawed humans who never actually knew each other because they were too busy being addicted to their fantasies. This is the dangerous truth they don't teach you. Romantic love, as society defines it, is a temporary psychosis, a beautiful, intoxicating, devastating break from reality that feels more real than reality itself. And just like any addiction, it requires progressively more to maintain. This is why relationships escalate, why there's pressure to move in together, get engaged, get married, have kids. Because the high is fading and you need bigger commitments to recreate that initial feeling. You need larger doses. You need to bind yourself more completely to this person to keep feeling what you felt at the beginning. But it never works, because you're not chasing love. You're chasing a neurochemical state that your brain experienced during projection and now craves like any other drug. And the tragedy is, most people never wake up to this. They spend their entire lives going from fix to fix, relationship to relationship, always chasing that initial high, never understanding that what they're really craving is wholeness. And wholeness cannot be achieved through another person. It can only be achieved through the brutal, lonely, essential work of individuation, of becoming psychologically complete within yourself. Jung spent decades developing a cure for love addiction, not because he was against relationships, but because he understood that genuine connection can only exist between two whole people. And most people entering relationships are fragmented, dependent, desperately seeking in another what they refuse to develop in themselves. He called his cure individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole by integrating all the unconscious aspects of your personality. Sounds simple. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Because it requires you to face the terrifying reality that you don't need another person to be complete. You never did. That need was always an illusion. A story your wounded psyche told you to avoid the real work of psychological integration. Here's what happens when someone commits to individuation instead of love addiction. First, they go through withdrawal. Not from a person, but from the fantasy of being saved by a person. They feel the emptiness they've been running from their entire lives, the void they've been trying to fill with relationships, validation, the high of being desired. And instead of immediately seeking the next fix, they sit in that emptiness. They explore it. They discover it's not actually emptiness at all. It's unexplored psychological territory. Parts of themselves they abandoned or never developed because they were too busy merging with others. Jung documented this process extensively. The patient who was addicted to unavailable partners discovered she was avoiding her own masculine energy, her capacity for independence and achievement. The man who jumped from relationship to relationship realized he was running from his own feminine qualities, his capacity for vulnerability and emotional depth. They weren't looking for partners, they were looking for permission to be whole. And they kept outsourcing that permission to others instead of claiming it themselves. This is why breakups feel like death. Because in a very real sense, part of you is dying. The projected fantasy, the illusion that this person completed you, the story that you needed them to be okay. When that dies, you're forced to confront the reality that you were always complete. You just convinced yourself otherwise. And now you have to learn to live as a whole person, which means taking full responsibility for your own psychological state. No more blaming your mood on whether they texted back. No more making your self-worth dependent on their desire for you. No more using another person's presence to avoid facing yourself. Most people can't handle this responsibility, so they immediately seek the next relationship, the next projection, the next hit. They stay addicted their entire lives, wondering why they keep attracting the same type of person, experiencing the same patterns, feeling the same dissatisfaction, never recognizing they're not attracting anything. They're projecting the same unconscious material onto different people and wondering why the movie keeps having the same plot. Jung observed that his individuated patients lost interest in conventional romance, not because they became cold or unloving, but because they could finally see clearly. They could see when someone was projecting onto them. They could recognize love addiction masquerading as connection. They could tell the difference between genuine relating and two fragmented people trying to complete each other. And once you see this clearly, you can't unsee it. You watch people fall in love and you see what's really happening. Two addicts finding their drug of choice in each other. Two fragmented people mistaking merger for wholeness. Two individuals abandoning their path of individuation for the comfortable illusion that someone else can do that work for them. You watch it with the same sadness you'd watch someone pick up a needle, knowing the high will be incredible and the crash will be devastating. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung didn't say never have relationships. He said only have relationships after you've done the work of becoming whole. Because then you're not seeking completion. You're not addicted to validation. You're not projecting unconscious material. You're two complete individuals choosing to share space, not two half-people desperately clinging to each other to feel whole. This kind of relationship looks nothing like what society sells as love. There's no obsession, no constant need for reassurance, no anxiety about whether they still love you, no checking their location, no jealousy consuming your peace, no identity loss, no compromise of your core values or mission. Just two sovereign beings who enhance each other's lives without needing each other to function. Most people have never experienced this. They've only known love addiction, And when you describe a relationship without neediness, without anxiety, without that constant craving for more contact, more validation, more proof of love, they think you're describing something cold, something empty, something not worth having. They literally cannot imagine connection without addiction. Their brains have been so conditioned to associate love with craving that peace feels like absence. This is the final and most devastating effect of love addiction. It makes you incapable of recognizing healthy relating. Your nervous system has been conditioned to interpret anxiety as attraction, instability as passion, neediness as intimacy. When you meet someone and don't feel that addictive pull, that obsessive thinking, that desperate craving, you think there's no chemistry. You walk away from potential genuine connection because it doesn't trigger your addiction pathways. You choose the person who makes you anxious over the person who makes you peaceful. You pick the unavailable person who keeps you chasing over the available person who actually sees you. You mistake withdrawal symptoms for love and peace for boredom. Your entire selection mechanism has been corrupted by addiction. And you don't even know it because everyone around you is operating from the same corrupted programming. Jung warned that modern society was creating generations of people incapable of genuine intimacy because they'd been conditioned to confuse addiction with love. He was writing this in the 1930s. Imagine what he'd say about dating apps, about hookup culture, about the instant gratification and constant stimulation of modern romance. The addiction has been weaponized, optimized, turned into an industry that profits from keeping you fragmented, desperate, endlessly seeking. Here's the cure Jung prescribed. Complete withdrawal, not forever but long enough to break the addiction cycle. Long enough to discover who you are without someone else defining you. Long enough to integrate your unconscious material instead of projecting it. Long enough to develop the capacity to be alone without being lonely. To be complete without being partnered. To feel whole without being chosen. He recommended minimum 2 years. 2 years of intentional solitude, not isolation, not avoiding all human connection, but complete abstinence from romantic relating, from seeking validation through attraction, from using another person to feel okay about yourself. 2 years to do the brutal work of facing everything you've been running from, every wound you've been asking partners to heal, every quality you've been seeking in others instead of developing in yourself, every story about needing to be completed. 2 years to discover that you were always whole, and the search was the problem, not the solution. Most people hear this and immediately reject it. 2 years alone? Impossible. I'll be miserable. I'll miss out. I'll end up alone forever. That reaction tells you everything. You're not rejecting the timeline. You're revealing your addiction. An alcoholic responds the same way when you suggest sobriety. A gambling addict has identical objections to stopping. The resistance isn't rational. It's the addiction protecting itself from extinction. But here's what Jung's patients discovered. The ones who actually committed to the process, who did the work, who faced themselves completely. They didn't end up alone. They ended up free. Free from the constant craving. Free from the need for external validation. Free from the anxiety of wondering if they're enough. Free from the exhaustion of maintaining a false self to keep someone interested. They became dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous to love addiction, dangerous to projection, dangerous to anyone trying to complete themselves through another person. They could smell neediness from a mile away and had zero interest in participating. They could recognize when someone was in love with a projection and gently refuse to play that role. They could walk away from incredible chemistry when they recognized it was just addiction calling, and the relationships they eventually chose to participate in were unrecognizable compared to what they'd experienced before. No drama, no anxiety, no games, Just two complete people sharing space, supporting each other's continued growth, maintaining their individual wholeness while choosing partnership. This is what's possible on the other side of love addiction. But you have to be willing to go through withdrawal. You have to be willing to sit with the emptiness and discover it's actually fullness. You have to be willing to look pathetic to friends who don't understand why you're not dating. You have to be willing to feel the fear that maybe you will end up alone and do it anyway, because your wholeness matters more than your fear. Jung's final insight was this: love addiction keeps you from your life's purpose. Every hour spent obsessing over whether they'll text back is an hour not spent on your actual work. Every day lost to relationship drama is a day not spent becoming who you're meant to become. Every year given to maintaining a connection built on neediness is a year stolen from your individuation. You have a finite amount of time on this planet, and right now, if you're caught in love addiction, you're spending that time being a supporting character in your own life, waiting for someone else to make you feel okay, seeking permission to be whole, chasing a high that gets weaker every time while the cost gets higher. Write in the comments right now, I choose individuation. 3 words that represent the most radical decision you'll ever make. The decision to become whole within yourself instead of seeking wholeness through another. Drop those words and feel what happens in your body. That resistance, that fear, that voice saying, "This is too extreme." That's the addiction talking. Let me see how many people are ready to face themselves completely, instead of endlessly seeking themselves in others. Hit that subscribe button because what's coming next will show you exactly how to walk the path of individuation. The specific practices Jung developed to integrate your unconscious, to reclaim your projections, to become so complete within yourself that love becomes a choice rather than a need. The addicted won't want to hear it. The dependent will call it impossible. The fragmented will say it's too hard. But you're here because something in you knows the truth. You're tired of being addicted. You're ready to be free. Smash that like button right now because you're helping break other people free from the same addiction. You're showing them there's another way, a harder way, a lonelier way, but a way that leads to actual wholeness instead of temporary highs followed by devastating crashes. The next video reveals the practices, the techniques, the exact roadmap Jung created for psychological integration. Everything you need to break free from love addiction and discover what it actually feels like to be complete. Get ready, because freedom is waiting on the other side of your willingness to face yourself.